The pounding on my door at 2 a.m. shattered the silence of my isolated Montana ranch house, yanking me from the uneasy sleep that had become my new normal. When I swung the door open to find a tall, soaked cowboy standing there with rain streaming down his rugged face, I had no clue that letting him inside would force me to face the truth I'd spent years burying deep inside. "Evening, sir. Name's Roman. My old pickup gave out on me a couple miles back in this hell of a storm. Mind if I waited out here? I swear I ain't looking for charity. Just a dry spot till morning." His voice was low and gravelly with a Texas drawl, and despite the cold water dripping from his hat, there was a quiet dignity in how he held himself. I hesitated, my hand still gripping the door. Theodore was my name, and at 34, I'd learned to value my solitude after the mess with my ex-fiancée. Sarah left me questioning everything about relationships and myself. But the wind howled outside, and something in his exhausted blue eyes struck a chord. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Bathroom's down the hall if you want to dry off." "Name's Theodore." He nodded gratefully and stepped inside, leaving a trail of water on the hardwood floor I'd refinished myself last summer. The ranch had been in my family for 3 generations, tucked into the rolling hills outside Bozeman, far enough from town to feel like another world. Lately, though, it felt more like a cage than a refuge. I handed him a towel from the linen closet and watched as he shrugged off his soaked denim jacket, revealing a simple plaid shirt that clung to his broad shoulders. There was nothing flashy about him, just the kind of steady strength you see in men who work the land for a living. We didn't talk much at first. I brewed a pot of coffee while he dried off, the storm rattling the windows like it wanted to tear the place apart. Over 2 steaming mugs at the kitchen table, Roman shared bits of his story. He was 32, had grown up on a cattle ranch near Amarillo, but left after his father passed and the bank started circling. "Drifting for work," he said simply, staring into his cup. "Thought I'd head up to Wyoming for the spring roundup. Didn't plan on breaking down in Montana." I told him about the ranch, how I'd taken it over after my parents retired to Florida, how the winters here tested a man in ways city folks couldn't understand. He listened without interrupting, and for the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel empty. Something about the way he met my eyes made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't name. A flicker of recognition I pushed down hard. By the time the rain eased to a drizzle, I'd offered him the couch with an extra blanket. "Stay as long as the truck needs fixin'," I said, surprising myself. Roman thanked me again, his calloused hand brushing mine as he took the blanket. That small touch lingered longer than it should have. I retreated to my bedroom, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there listening to the occasional creak of the floorboards as he settled in, replaying the evening in my head. Sarah and I had called it quits 6 months ago because I couldn't give her the future she deserved. I told myself it was timing, work, anything but the truth that had haunted me since college. That one drunken night with my roommate where everything felt right for a moment before panic set in. I buried it deep, dated women, built this life. Now here was a stranger whose presence made the walls feel thinner. I stared at the ceiling until the first gray light of dawn crept in, wondering why my heart was racing like I'd run a marathon. Little did I know, that night was only the beginning of the storm inside me. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the ranch into a patchwork of gold and green. I found Roman already up, standing on the porch with a mug of coffee, his hat pulled low as he surveyed the damage from the storm. "Truck's still dead," he said when I joined him, "but I can walk into town for parts if you point me the way." I shook my head. "No need. I've got tools in the barn. We could take a look after breakfast." He smiled then, a slow, genuine thing that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and I felt that same unexplained pull again. Over eggs and bacon at the table, our conversation flowed easier. He asked about my life here, and I found myself opening up more than I intended, talking about the loneliness that crept in during long winters, the way the land demanded everything but gave back peace if you listened. Roman nodded like he understood every word. "Ranch life will do that to you," he said quietly. "Makes you face what's real and what's just noise." We spent the morning under the hood of his old Ford, side by side in the barn. His hands were steady and sure, explaining the alternator issue with the patience of a man who'd fixed 1,000 things on the road. I handed him tools, our arms brushing occasionally, and each time it sent a spark through me, I tried to ignore. By noon, the truck rumbled to life, but neither of us moved to say goodbye right away. "Appreciate this more than you know, Theodore," he said, wiping grease from his hands. Most folks would have turned me away. I shrugged, but inside a decision was forming I couldn't yet name. The storm had passed, but something new was building. I offered him lunch, then another night if he wanted a rest before heading out. He accepted with that same quiet gratitude, and as we sat on the porch watching the horses graze, I realized I wasn't ready for him to leave. Not yet. The afternoon stretched into evening with stories of his travels and my quiet routines, each word drawing us closer in ways I wasn't prepared for. By the time the sun dipped low, painting the hills in fiery orange, I knew one thing for certain. Roman wasn't just passing through. He was the mirror I'd been avoiding for years. That second evening, after a simple dinner of steak and potatoes we cooked together, Roman and I sat by the fireplace with glasses of whiskey from the bottle my grandfather had left behind. The flames crackled softly, casting dancing shadows across the room. And for the first time in forever, the house felt warm in more than just temperature. He talked about his family back in Texas, how his younger sister still ran the ranch with her husband, how his father had never understood why Roman never settled down with a girl from church. Said I was too restless. Roman chuckled, but there was a shadow in his voice. I shared about Sarah, how we'd been together 3 years, and everyone thought we'd get married, how I'd called it off because something always felt missing, like I was playing a role written for someone else. He listened without judgment, nodding slowly, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight in a way that made my throat tight. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's dream?" he asked quietly, swirling the whiskey in his glass. I met his gaze and felt the weight of years lifting just a fraction. Every damn day, I admitted. The words hung there between us, heavier than the storm clouds earlier. We didn't push further that night, but the air had shifted. When we finally turned in, Roman on the couch again, I lay awake replaying every glance, every shared laugh. Was this what I've been running from? The possibility that the spark I'd felt with men in fleeting moments wasn't a flaw, but a truth? Morning came too soon, and over breakfast, Roman mentioned he could head out after fixing a loose fence post he'd noticed. I found myself suggesting he stay another day to help around the place, pay him in cash for the labor. He agreed, and just like that, the decision extended our time together. We worked side by side all morning, repairing fences along the north pasture. Roman moved with the easy grace of a man born to the saddle, showing me tricks for tightening wire that saved hours. Conversation turned personal again as sweat beaded on our brows under the warming sun. He told me about a buddy he'd lost touch with after leaving Texas, someone who'd understood him in ways others couldn't. I didn't press, but the way his voice softened made me wonder. In return, I opened up about the pressure from my brother Jake, who lived in town and kept pushing me to date again, settle down, keep the family name going. "He means well," I said, "but he doesn't get it." Roman wiped his forehead with his sleeve and looked at me steadily. "Sometimes the people closest to you see what they want to see, not what's really there." His words hit deeper than he knew. By afternoon, we'd finished the fence and took a break by the creek that ran through the property. Sitting on the bank with our boots off, feet in the cool water, the conversation flowed like the stream itself. Roman shared stories of nights on the road, the loneliness that came with freedom, how he'd learned to keep moving to avoid getting too close to anyone. I confessed how the ranch had become my hiding place after college, where I'd buried doubts under hard work and routine. What if the life you're building ain't the one you're meant for? I asked more to myself than him. He didn't answer right away, just tossed a pebble into the water and watched the ripples. "Then you gotta decide if you're brave enough to tear it down and start over." The words lingered as we headed back to the house, the sun high overhead casting long shadows that mirrored the ones in my mind. That evening, after showers and another shared meal, we played cards at the kitchen table, laughing over bad hands and old jokes. Roman's laugh was deep and genuine, filling the room in a way that made the loneliness of the past months feel distant. As the night wore on, I caught myself staring a second too long at the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, the strong line of his jaw. Panic flickered in my chest, but so did something warmer, more alive. When we said goodnight, his hand rested on my shoulder for a brief moment. "Thanks for giving me this time, Theodore. Means more than you know." I nodded, throat dry, and retreated to my room. Lying there, heart pounding, I realized the stranger on my couch wasn't a stranger anymore. He was the catalyst I'd never asked for but desperately needed. The internal battle raged, deny it like always, or face the possibility that love didn't have to look like what everyone expected. Sleep came in fits, dreams tangled with blue eyes and open roads, and by the time dawn broke again, I knew I couldn't send him away. Not without knowing why his presence had cracked open doors I'd nailed shut years ago. The following day brought more work and more talk. We mended a broken gate on the south pasture, Roman teaching me techniques from his Texas days while I shared stories of Montana winters that could freeze a man solid. Lunch was sandwiches on the porch, and as we ate, he asked about my family dynamics. I told him about Jake's upcoming visit, how my brother always brought up settling down, grandkids for our parents. "Sounds like he's carrying the weight of expectations, too," Roman observed. I agreed, but inside, the weight felt heavier knowing what I was starting to feel. Afternoon turned to evening with a horseback ride to check the herd. Riding side by side through the hills, the wind whipping our faces, Roman looked at home in the saddle. "This place suits you," he said as we paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. "But you look like you're carrying more than just the ranch on your shoulders." His insight pierced me, and for the first time, I didn't deflect. "Maybe I am," I replied. The ride back was quieter, but the silence was comfortable, charged with unspoken understanding. As night fell, we sat by the fire again, and the conversation turned to dreams deferred. Roman spoke of wanting stability after years of drifting, maybe a small place of his own someday. I admitted the ranch felt like both anchor and chain. The whiskey loosened tongues further, and when he asked if I'd ever wondered about paths not taken, I answered honestly for the first time in my life. "More than you know." His eyes held mine across the flames, and in that moment, the air thickened with possibility. We didn't name it, but it was there, pulling us closer without a single touch. When we finally turned in, the house felt smaller, the walls closer, my thoughts a whirlwind of fear and hope. Roman's presence had awakened something I could no longer ignore, and as sleep claimed me, I wondered what morning would bring if I let it. Morning light filtered through the curtains, and I found Roman already in the kitchen, flipping pancakes like he'd been there forever. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the air, and for a second, it felt normal, domestic even. But then he turned, that steady gaze meeting mine, and the words came out before I could stop them. "Roman, about last night. I think there's something I need to say." He set the spatula down, wiping his hands on a towel, his expression open but guarded. "Me too, Theodore. Been thinking all night." What followed was the confession that cracked my world wide open. He admitted he'd felt the connection too, that drifting hadn't just been about work, but running from who he was, from feelings for men he'd never acted on fully because of his family's expectations and the life he'd been raised in. "Never met anyone who made it feel safe to stop running," he said quietly. "Till you." My hands shook as I gripped the counter. His words mirrored the storm inside me. The years of denial, the fear of what admitting it would mean for the ranch, my family, the life I'd built on lies. I told him about the college night, the doubts with Sarah, how I'd convinced myself it was just confusion. "But it's not," I whispered. "Not anymore." We stood there in the kitchen, pancakes forgotten, the weight of truth settling between us. No dramatic gestures, just raw honesty that left us both exposed. Roman reached out, his hand covering mine on the counter, warm and calloused. "Don't gotta decide nothing today, but I ain't leaving if you want me to stay a bit longer." I nodded, throat tight, and in that moment the decision crystallized. I couldn't keep pretending. When Jake called later that morning to say he was coming by for dinner, I knew the confrontation was coming sooner than I'd hoped. The day passed in a haze of chores and quiet talks. Roman helped with the horses, his presence steady as I wrestled with what to do next. By afternoon, I called Sarah to meet for coffee in town, needing to close that chapter properly. She listened as I stumbled through an explanation, not full details, but enough that she saw the truth in my eyes. I always wondered, she said softly, no anger, just sadness. Be happy, Theodore. Driving home, relief mixed with terror. Roman was waiting on the porch when I returned, and one look at my face told him everything. You okay? He asked. I stepped closer, the space between us charged. Better than okay. Scared as hell, but real for the first time. That evening, Jake arrived with his wife and kids, the family dinner turning into the first test. He noticed Roman immediately, asked questions about the hired hand. Tension built as conversation turned to my future, Jake pushing about dating again. Roman stayed quiet, supportive with a glance here and there, but when Jake made a casual joke about real men settling down, I felt the crack widen. After dinner, as Jake helped load the dishwasher, he pulled me aside. Who's the cowboy, Theo? You two seem awful cozy. His tone was light, but I saw the suspicion. I deflected, heart racing, but the seed was planted. Roman and I sat on the porch after everyone left, the stars bright overhead. This ain't gonna be easy, he said. I agreed, but for the first time, the fear didn't paralyze me. His confession had shattered the closet I'd hidden in, and now I had to step into the light. We talked late into the night about what came next, his plans to stick around for roundup season, my need to figure out the ranch without hiding. Sleep came easier that night, knowing I wasn't alone in the turmoil. But dawn brought new challenges, and I knew the real tests were just beginning. The next few days blurred into a rhythm of work and growing closeness. Roman fixed the truck for good, but didn't leave, instead helping with branding the calves, his expertise invaluable. Our conversations deepened, revealing layers of past hurts and hopes. He shared about a brief relationship in his early 20s that ended in heartbreak and secrecy, teaching him to keep moving. I opened up about the isolation of small-town expectations, how friends drifted away when I didn't fit the mold. One afternoon by the creek again, sitting shoulder to shoulder, Roman turned to me. What if we don't have to run anymore? His question hung there, full of possibility and risk. I took his hand, the first deliberate touch, and felt the world shift. Then we face it together. But as we walked back, Jake's truck pulled up unexpectedly. He'd heard rumors in town, he said, about me and the drifter. The argument that followed was heated, Jake accusing me of throwing away the family legacy, his voice laced with disappointment and something uglier. Roman stood by silently, letting me fight my battle, but his presence gave me strength. This is my life, Jake, I said finally, not yours to dictate. He left angry, and the silence after was heavy. That night, Roman and I talked through the fallout, his calm voice grounding me as doubt crept in. Family's complicated, he said, but so is Danine, who you are. His words reinforced the decision I'd made at dawn after his confession. No more hiding. The morning after brought clarity and a new resolve. I called my parents in Florida. The conversation stilted but honest, their confusion palpable, but their love tentative. Roman packed a small bag, ready to head out if I needed space, but I stopped him. Stay, I said. This is just the start. As the sun rose higher, painting the ranch in gold, I felt the pieces of my old life crumbling, making room for something true. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with more confrontations and choices, but for the first time, I wasn't facing alone. The weeks that followed Jake's confrontation tested every resolve I'd built. News spread quietly through the small community, whispers at the feed store and church, the kind of small-town judgment that wore on a man like wind erosion on rock. Roman stayed on, helping with the spring work, his steady presence the anchor I needed. We kept things careful, no public displays, but in the quiet evenings on the porch or working the fields, our bond deepened through shared silences and honest talks. He opened up more about his own family back in Texas, how his mother had suspected but never asked, how leaving had been both escape and exile. I shared the pressure of the ranch, the loans my father had taken out, how failing now would mean losing everything generations had built. But losing yourself is worse, Roman said one night as we repaired a tractor in the barn, the scent of oil and hay around us. One afternoon, an old college friend, Mark, stopped by unannounced. He'd heard from Jake and came with well-meaning advice laced with caution. "Theo, this could ruin you here," he said over coffee. "People talk. The bank might look twice at your loan if they think." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. Roman was out checking fences, giving us space, but when Mark left, I felt the first real crack of betrayal. Mark had been the one I'd confided in years ago about my doubts, and now he was using it against me. That evening, I told Roman, anger and hurt mixing in my voice. He listened, then pulled me into a hug, the first real one, strong arms grounding me. "Ain't your fault folks can't handle change," he murmured. "We'll figure it." His support gave me courage to call the bank the next day, laying out my plans for the ranch without apology. They didn't pull funding, but the warning was there: keep it professional. Family pressure mounted when my parents flew in for a surprise visit, Jake's doing no doubt. The dinner was tense, Mom's eyes flicking between Roman and me, Dad asking pointed questions about the hired help. I held my ground, introducing Roman as a partner in the work, but the air was thick with unspoken questions. Later, alone with Mom on the porch, she asked gently if I was happy. "For the first time, yeah," I said. Her hug was warm but worried. Dad was harder, pulling me aside to talk legacy and grandkids. Roman stayed out of it, respecting the space, but his quiet strength when they left reminded me why this was worth fighting for. "They'll come around or they won't," he said. "But you can't live for them." Misunderstandings arose, too. One day in town, I ran into Sarah with her new boyfriend, and the look she gave Roman and me was complicated, a mix of understanding and lingering hurt. Later, Roman asked if I regretted anything. "Only the years I wasted hiding," I replied. We spent that night talking about the future, him considering staying permanently, me imagining a life where love didn't have to be secret. But betrayal struck harder when Mark spread more rumors, claiming I'd changed overnight because of the drifter. The feed store owner mentioned it casually, and I confronted Mark over the phone. His apology was weak, fear of association clear. Roman suggested we take a day off, drive to the mountains for perspective. The trip was healing, hiking trails where no one knew us, talking about sacrifices we'd make, like selling a section of land if needed to ease financial pressure from the gossip. Back home, the internal crisis peaked one stormy evening. Doubts flooded in. Was I selfish for appending everything? Would Roman stay once the novelty faded? He sensed it, sitting with me by the fire. "This ain't a phase for me, Theodore. Ain't for you either." His words cut through the noise, reminding me of the morning confession that started it all. We decided then to face the community together, attending a local rodeo as friends first, letting action speak. The stares were there, but so was the quiet support from unexpected places, an older rancher who pulled me aside with a nod of understanding. The growth was slow, painful but real. Roman's presence transformed the ranch from a hiding place to a home, and as spring turned to summer, I saw the man I'd become. No longer closeted, no longer alone. Sacrifices loomed, family ties strained, but the path forward felt right. One pivotal evening, as we watched the sunset from the ridge, Roman turned to me. "Whatever comes, we choose this." I agreed, the decision solidifying amid the chaos. The journey was far from over, but the awakening was complete. Conflicts with society escalated when a local paper ran a subtle piece on changing ranch dynamics, indirectly referencing us. Jake called furious, demanding I fix it. I refused, leading to a blowout argument where he accused me of betrayal. Roman mediated calmly, suggesting family counseling, but Jake hung up. The psychological toll was real, nights of doubt where I questioned if love was worth the isolation. Roman's patience and shared stories of his own past struggles helped me process, turning pain into strength. By month's end, We'd weathered the worst, the ranch thriving under our combined efforts, and my sense of self firmer than ever. The morning after a particularly tough week, waking to Roman making coffee, I realized the confession that shattered my old life had rebuilt it stronger. Choices had consequences, but so did courage. Summer brought longer days and new challenges as Roman and I navigated the evolving dynamics of our bond amid lingering prejudice. A neighboring rancher offered a business partnership for shared grazing land, but when he met Roman, the handshake was hesitant, questions veiled. We took the deal anyway, proving our reliability through hard work. Internally, I grappled with the identity shift, journaling late nights about the man I was becoming, the fears of losing community ties balanced against the freedom of truth. Roman shared his own awakening, how drifting had masked deeper loneliness until our night together. One weekend, we drove to Billings for supplies, the anonymity allowing small gestures like hands brushing in the truck, a quiet dinner where we talked openly about building a life. Back home, though, reality hit when an old friend from high school, now the town mechanic, refused service on Roman's truck after hearing rumors. The betrayal stung, echoing Mark's earlier actions, forcing me to confront how prejudice rippled outward. Family reconciliation attempts faltered when my parents invited us for a visit to Florida, but Jake boycotted, his silence a heavy weight. Mom's emails were supportive yet cautious, asking about the ranch and hinting at grandkids indirectly. Roman suggested I fly down alone first, giving space, but I insisted we go together. The trip was mixed. Dad warmed slowly over fishing trips, seeing Roman's work ethic, while Mom asked gentle questions about happiness. Returning strengthened, we faced a new misunderstanding when Roman's sister called from Texas, having heard vague stories and assuming he was in trouble. He explained honestly over speakerphone, her reaction shocked, but ultimately accepting, opening a door to healing his own family wounds. The psychological growth was profound. I no longer hid parts of myself, making decisions like updating the ranch website to feature both our names and operations. High points came during the county fair, where we entered a team roping event. The crowd's mixed reactions tested us, but winning the ribbon together felt like victory over more than cattle. That night, under the stars at camp, Roman spoke of commitment beyond drifting. "I choose this ranch, this life, you." His words echoed the morning after his confession, solidifying our path. But tension rose again when a former co-worker of mine from college reached out, spreading old rumors online in a misguided attempt to help by warning others. The online backlash was minor but hurtful, forcing sleepless nights of self-doubt. Roman stayed up with me, reminding me of the progress, the friends who'd stuck around. We decided to host a small barbecue for allies, turning isolation into connection. The event was healing, neighbors sharing stories of their own struggles, building a support network I never knew existed. As fall approached, a major sacrifice loomed, selling 20 acres to cover loan interest amid slowed business from gossip. Roman supported the decision, helping survey the land, his presence turning loss into opportunity for focus on what mattered. Internal conflicts peaked during a solo ride, where I questioned if I'd dragged him into my mess, but returning to find him waiting with dinner reaffirmed the choice. Misunderstandings with Jake eased slightly when he showed up unannounced, apologizing awkwardly after seeing the ranch thrive. "Didn't realize it made you this happy," he admitted. The conversation was raw, no full acceptance yet, but a step. Roman's quiet wisdom during the talk helped bridge gaps. The emotional journey deepened our friendship into partnership, conversations shifting to long-term plans like expanding the herd or building an extra cabin. One pivotal morning, waking to frost on the fields, I realized the stranger who'd knocked that stormy night had become my compass. Growth wasn't linear, but each decision, each consequence, shaped a truer version of myself. Betrayal resurfaced when Mark tried reconciling with a half apology laced with conditions, but I refused, standing firm. Roman's support through it reinforced trust. As leaves turned gold, We hiked the same ridge where promises were made, reflecting on the path from that one night to now. The awakening had cost friendships and family ease, but gained authenticity and love. Decisions like publicly listing the ranch under both names were scary but liberating. Psychological resilience built through facing prejudice head-on, turning fear into advocacy in small ways, like donating to local LGBTQ support groups anonymously. The file of challenges closed with renewed hope, Roman's hand in mine as we planned the next season. The journey continued, but the foundation was solid, born from one confession and countless choices. Winter arrived with snow blanketing the Montana hills, transforming the ranch into a quiet wonderland that mirrored the peace settling in my heart. Roman and I had weathered the storms of the past months, our bond forged stronger through every confrontation and sacrifice. Family ties with Jake improved gradually, holiday calls including tentative invitations, while my parents sent cards addressed to both of us, small steps toward acceptance. The community, too, shifted as our reliable work spoke louder than rumors, new partnerships forming with neighbors who'd seen our dedication. One crisp morning, as we fed the horses together, Roman turned to me with that familiar, steady gaze. "Remember the night I showed up soaked? Never thought it'd lead here." I smiled, pulling him close in the barn's warmth. "Best decision I ever made, letting you stay." The emotional growth was evident in how we navigated daily life, supporting each other's dreams, Roman taking on more management while I focused on expansion plans. A final misunderstanding arose when Roman's old Texas contact reached out about a high-paying job offer, tempting him back to familiar roads. Doubt flickered for a day as I feared he'd leave, but our honest talk that evening cleared it. "My drifting days are done," he said. "This is home now." The relief solidified everything, leading to a quiet ceremony in spring with close friends, not legal yet, but a commitment in our hearts. Sacrifices paid off as the ranch flourished, the sold acres funding improvements that brought stability. Society's pressures eased into respect, the once closeted man now openly living his truth, inspiring quiet conversations with younger ranch hands struggling similarly. The journey from internal crisis to awakening had reshaped not just me, but the life we'd built together. Looking back at that stormy night and the morning confession that changed everything, I saw the beauty in the choices that led us here. Facing family, enduring betrayal, embracing growth. Roman and I stood on the same porch where it began, watching the sunrise paint the hills, hands intertwined. The man who'd knocked seeking shelter had given me more than a place to stay. He'd given me myself. As new seasons approached, the future held promise, challenges sure to come, but met with the strength of truth and love. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours, real and earned through every step. True or false? One night, with a stranger, can awaken a man's hidden truth about love and force him to rebuild his entire life around it.